I never planned on falling for the girl down the hall. Not really. Maylin and I had been roommates for almost 2 years in that cramped 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat in Portland. The kind of place where the radiator clanked at 3 in the morning and the walls were thin enough that we both pretended not to hear each other cry sometimes. She was studying to become a pediatric nurse, working double shifts at the hospital while finishing her last year of school. And I was the guy who fixed motorcycles in a garage 2 blocks away and paid rent a week late. More often than I'd like to admit, we were an odd pair. She kept the apartment spotless. I kept forgetting to take out the trash. She made dumplings from scratch every Sunday and always left a plate for me on the counter with a sticky note that said, "Eat before you starve, idiot." I kept her old truck running for free. That was the rhythm of us. Easy, unspoken, comfortable. It was a Tuesday in October when everything changed. She came home late, dropped her bag by the door, and sat down across from me at the kitchen table without saying a word. I knew something was wrong because Maylene always said something. She was the loudest, quiet person I'd ever met, always humming, always narrating her day out loud, even if nobody was listening. That night she just sat there, staring at her hands. "My grandmother is dying," she finally said. "Doctors give her maybe 2 months. Lung cancer, stage 4. She wants to see me get married before she goes. It's the one thing she's ever asked me for." I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. Maylin's family was old-fashioned in the way that matters most to the people carrying the weight of it. Her grandmother had raised her for 6 years back in Guangzhou while her parents worked overseas, trying to build a life in America. And when the family finally reunited and immigrated together when Maylin was 11, her grandmother stayed in Portland with them in a small house 3 streets from ours, tending a garden of bok choy and jasmine like it was the only thing keeping her alive. She was the reason Maylin ever smiled the way she did. Sharp, teasing, warm at the center. "She doesn't need to see me actually married," Maylin continued, her voice cracking just slightly. "She needs to see me happy, settled. She keeps saying she can't rest not knowing. I have someone. I don't have anyone, Daniel. I've been so busy with school and work. I haven't dated in 3 years." She looked up at me then, and there was something both desperate and embarrassed in her eyes. "I know this is insane. I know it. But could you pretend? Just for a few weeks. Meet her. Let her think we're engaged. She won't ask for a wedding. She just wants to know I'm not going to be alone." I should have said no. Any reasonable person would have said no. But I'd known Maylin long enough to understand that underneath the bravado, she rarely asked anyone for anything. She paid her own way through everything, refused help even when she desperately needed it. And here she was, humbled at her own kitchen table, asking me to do the one thing that terrified her most, depend on someone else. "Okay," I said. "I'll do it." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. "Thank you, I mean it. I'll figure out how to pay you back somehow." "You don't have to pay me back. Just make more dumplings." That got the first real smile out of her all night. We met her grandmother, Nai, the following weekend. The old woman was smaller than I expected, wrapped in 3 layers of sweaters despite the mild autumn weather, sitting in a wicker chair on her porch surrounded by potted herbs. Her eyes, though clouded slightly with age, were sharp as anything when they landed on me. "So this is the one," she said in accented English, studying me like she was pricing a used car. "Mechanic?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good hands are important," she said, nodding slowly as if that settled something important. "Sit. Tell me how you two met." Maylin squeezed my hand under the table, a silent warning, and I told the truth dressed up in better clothes, that we'd been roommates, that somewhere between late-night study sessions and me teaching her to change her own oil, something had shifted. It wasn't entirely a lie. Some of it, if I was honest with myself, wasn't a lie at all. That first visit turned into a weekly ritual. Every Sunday, Maylin and I would walk to Nai's house, and I would sit on that porch and listen to stories about old Guangzhou, about the fishing village Nai grew up in, about a war she'd survived, as a child and a husband, she'd loved for 40 years, before losing him to a heart attack in his sleep. She talked about Maylin as a little girl, stubborn and fierce, climbing trees she had no business climbing, refusing to cry even when she fell. "She never lets anyone see her hurting," Nai told me once, while Maylin was inside making tea. "You be careful with that girl. She will break long before she ever asks you to catch her." I didn't know what to do with that sentence except carry it around in my chest for the rest of the week. The lie, as lies do, started growing roots we hadn't planted on purpose. Maylin started holding my hand without needing an audience. I started noticing the small things, the way she chewed the end of her pen when she was nervous studying for exams, the way she hummed old Cantonese songs while cooking, off-key and completely unashamed. We fell into a routine that felt less like performance and more like practice for something real. Neither of us said it out loud. I think we were both too afraid that naming it would break it. Nai's health declined faster than the doctors predicted. By December, she was mostly bedridden, and our Sunday visits moved from the porch to a small bedroom that smelled like eucalyptus and old paper. She held my hand one afternoon with a strength that surprised me, given how frail she'd become. "When is the wedding?" she asked. Not a suggestion, a demand wrapped in the softness of a dying woman's hope. Malin froze beside me. I felt her whole body go rigid. "Soon," I said, because it was the only answer that wouldn't break something in that room. "We're planning it soon, Nai." She smiled and closed her eyes, satisfied, and drifted into sleep. Outside in the hallway, Malin pressed her back against the wall and slid down until she was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest. "I can't keep lying to her," she whispered. "Not while she's like this. It feels cruel." "Then what do we do?" She looked up at me, and for the first time in months, there was no performance in her eyes at all. Just her, scared, exhausted, real. "I don't know anymore what part of this is fake." I sat down next to her on that cold linoleum floor, our shoulders touching, and I told her the truth I'd been carrying since October. "None of it feels fake to me. Not anymore. Maybe it never did." She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then she turned her face toward mine, close enough that I could feel her breath, and she whispered, "Kiss me like you mean it." Not for her. Not for anyone else in that room. Just for me. I need to know if this is real before I lose the only person who ever asked me to be happy. So I did. Not the practiced, performative kiss we'd given each other in front of Nai a dozen times over the past months to sell the lie. This one was slow, uncertain, honest, the kind of kiss that carries every unspoken thing two people have been too scared to say. When we finally pulled apart, she was crying, and so, embarrassingly, was I. "I've been in love with you since March," she admitted. "Since you stayed up all night helping me study for my anatomy final and fell asleep with a highlighter still in your hand. I just didn't know how to say it without ruining what we had." "I've loved you longer than that," I said. "I just didn't think someone like you would ever choose someone like me." Nai passed away 3 weeks later in her sleep, with Mei-Lin holding one hand and me holding the other, in her final lucid days. She told Mei-Lin something I only learned about afterward, something Mei-Lin didn't share with me until months later. On a night when we sat together on our apartment floor going through old photographs, Nai had told her granddaughter that she always knew, from the very first Sunday visit, that the engagement was invented. "You cannot fool an old woman who has loved someone for 40 years, she'd said. "I only wanted to give you both a reason to stop pretending you didn't feel it." The lie we built to comfort a dying woman had, without either of us fully realizing it, become the truest thing in both of our lives. We didn't rush anything after that. There was no dramatic proposal, no rings bought in grief-stricken haste. Instead, we let ourselves grieve and heal and slowly build something real out of the architecture we'd accidentally constructed. It took almost a year before I actually proposed, not on some elaborate stage, but on that same porch where I'd first met Nai, surrounded by the same bok choy and jasmine Mei-Lin had kept alive in her memory. I didn't have a rehearsed speech. I just told her that, somewhere between fixing her truck and pretending to love her for a stranger's peace of mind, I'd stopped pretending entirely, and I wanted the rest of my life to prove it. She said yes before I even finished the sentence. We got married the following spring in a small ceremony in that same garden, jasmine blooming everywhere. A framed photograph of Nai sitting on a chair we left empty for her at the front row. Mei-Lin wore her grandmother's jade bracelet, the one Nai had pressed into her hands during those final weeks. And somewhere in the middle of the vows, I swear I felt the warmth of an old woman's hand on my shoulder, the same way she used to grip it when she wanted to make sure I was listening. People ask us sometimes how we knew, how two people who started as a lie built to soothe a grandmother's fear ended up with something that lasted. I never have a clean answer. All I know is that some of the realest things in life begin as something we tell ourselves is temporary, a favor, a performance, a kindness with an expiration date. But love has never cared much for the terms we set on it. Sometimes it just waits patiently in the wings of a lie, until someone finally asks the right question at exactly the wrong moment. In a cold hospital hallway with nothing left to lose, sometimes it whispers, "Kiss me like you mean it," and means it more than anything ever said out loud.